Just give me a few minutes there as we sign in live to Zoom. Awesome. Now I am on. Just give me a few minutes there as we sign in live to Zoom. Awesome. Now, good. Just needed to pause that. Good. Once again, I'm Troy Clark, and I'm your host for this afternoon. And we have a wonderful topic that we will be sharing this afternoon. And our topic is insulating yourself in times of crisis. Normally, our training workshops take on the form where we have interactive and we put our participants into group. But today, I will just highlight the information. And then next week, Sunday, what we will do is we will give a pre-test and we'll give a survey dealing with to see what information persons would have known about the topic matter that we're dealing with today. So today we're talking about insulating yourself in times of crisis, discovering your work beyond your job. And a lot of times people talk about what is crisis? Defining a crisis. A crisis is an event, a circumstance, or a solution affecting you or your environment over which you have no direct control or responsibility. But bear in mind, although a crisis is something that you don't have any direct control or responsibility for, you're always in control with your thinking faculty. You're always in control with your mindset so that you can determine how to respond. Effects of crisis. Crisis causes fear. And as we move into actually 5, 6 from March to now, April, May, June, July, August, 5 months into this pandemic, for many, this is a crisis for. And so a lot of people become fearful during times of crisis. When it was hurricane, there was a lot of fear because persons lost homes, they lost their belongings, and as a result, fear crept in. There's trauma. A lot of people experience traumatic incidents in times of crisis. And as we know, crises are, in many instances, are not man-made. They are natural occurrences like hurricanes. Now, there are some crises that people cause in their lives. Like, for example, if I eat too much and I become overweight and the doctor tells me that if I don't change my diet, I will die within 6 months, that's a crisis. And so as a result, a lot of times people don't change what they do unless they find themselves in a crisis situation. And for some, it can become traumatic and they make changes for the betterment. Crisis affects, causes depression. And even now, you can see a lot of people are depressed because they lost their home, they lost their financial standing as a result of losing jobs. Some people can't feed their family, so they become depressed, despair. As like, well, one thing is hitting us back after each other. Case in point, hurricane came, Hurricane Dorian. Several months later, in less than a year, you get COVID-19. So people become despair. It's like, what can I do? Where can I go? How can I survive? And despair creeps in. Then there's frustration. And if you listen to the news, you will hear, and even that, you don't even have to listen to your news. You can just pick up your phone. Just pick up your phone and you will see WhatsApp messages going all over the place. Some people talking about revolution on Tuesday. There's a emergency order on, and they want to demonstrate because they're frustrated of being locked down. For whatever reason, crisis affects them. Then you have anxiety. I have a friend, she suffers from anxiety and plus depression. And although she's still working, sometimes anxiety creeps in. She's working from home. She's wondering if she can finish her assignments on time. And so anxiety creeps in. Or she's wondering if the company is going to continue to keep her on if she have job security during this time. And as a result, anxiety creeps in. Then there's loneliness. And we all can talk and we all can actually know about loneliness. And when we talk about loneliness, we're talking about, it's like where we're so used to reaching out to friends, family, and loved ones, we can't do the regular things. And so some of us become alone, then some of us become not only alone, but we take on loneliness. It's like we can't reach out because we always, especially if our love language is physical touch. And being around folks for them to affirm us, we become lonely. Then there's abandonment. And you see that when people get sick and they go into the hospital with this virus, family, loved ones can't come. And it isn't intentional abandonment in this sense. But the person who might be the victim can feel as though everybody's abandoning them as a result of what is going on. And they start worrying. Some people actually die of worrying, not even the crisis itself, but as a result of worrying, they take on that aspect. And we always tell people in our sessions, in our therapeutic sessions, we say, what is the worry? We ask them to name the worry. When we ask them to name the worry, they give us the worry. We ask them how much control, or we ask them, do you have any control over that worry? And if they say yes, we ask them how much control they have. And we say, give us a percentage. They give us a percentage of the control that they have. And once they give us the percentage of the control that they have, we ask them, are you doing everything possible in your self with that control? And they say yes. Then we ask, why worry? And we don't ask them, after we ask them the question, we don't want really a response when we ask you why worry, because we call it cognitive dissonance. Because there's a fight between in their mind, why am I worrying? If I say I have control over this, but I'm still worrying about this, but I doing all I can do. So we say, you know what? Just say the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And deal with it and leave it as that. And you have hopelessness. It's like there's no tomorrow. There's no tomorrow. That's how some folks feel as a result of the crisis situation that they find themselves in. And sense of loss. You have sense of death, sense of survival. You have abuse. Abuse happens in certain crisis situation. And since COVID-19, being a trained social worker and working closely with individuals in that field, we found out that, physical abuse increased because people they were not so used to being around each other so long for such a long period of time. And so they're not able to handle their emotions effectively. And the only best way they're able to deal with situations is actually in a violent way, which is unacceptable. Then you have crime. And of course, in any crisis situation, you will find that persons will take advantage of any unsecured or weak areas in the community. And they will perpetrate crime upon property and crime upon individuals. Like there's a crisis going on in the United States right now. And because of the lack of trust for police officers and the support that the police used to get, crime has increased tremendously throughout many states throughout the US. And of course, along with the abuse, you have domestic violence, which is another form of abuse that happens during crisis situation. Results of crisis is unity. And when crisis happens at times, you will find that, like case in point, a hurricane happens, Hurricane Dorian, people who never used to speak to one another start speaking to each other, because if that is happening right now, the neighbor house is being filled up with water and you never used to speak to your neighbor. You going over there rescuing your neighbor. So crisis sometimes can bring a unity to individuals. Crisis creates community. And people get together and they start sharing common resources, things that they have that other persons wouldn't have, and they will share that. So results of crisis creates community. Crisis produces empathy. And the Lord, when I ever say the Lord allows certain things to happen to us, to bring us down to simplistic form, where we have to empathize for persons who didn't have. And as a result, we learn to have empathy for other persons who we would normally have it for. And then crisis produces solidarity. And look here, the numbers are going up. We're gonna stay on lockdown. Let us all as a community do this together as one so that we can get out of this lockdown. And so it produces solidarity. Crisis produces humanity. We start caring about one another more as a result of the crisis. Crisis brings you back to spirituality. Trust me, I know so many persons have not prayed in their life before until a major hurricane come their way, or even this pandemic of COVID-19. So you will see that people pray more, they find spirituality. And I think in my personal belief system, I believe that God allowed this to happen to this earth so that mankind can turn back to him. That's my personal belief. Then crisis brings you back to simplicity of life. When you used to go to restaurant, dining and everything, hey, you gotta cook 3 meals home daily. So crisis brings you back to simplicity of life. And so we say, yes, the crisis comes on. There's effects of crisis. Then there are the results of crisis. But there is what we call response, which is positive, and there's reaction, what we call negative. The power of thoughts and words is very important in any situation, and mostly in a crisis situation. Whatever you call or label a thing, that it is what it becomes to you. Always remember that. Whatever you call or label a thing, that's why it's very important for how parents or what parents call their child. And even if you see in your community and in your neighborhood, you see, especially in gangs, you have some guys, my dog, they label themselves as my dog. Mind you, their parents never named them my dog, but they take on the name or the AKA my dog and they act. And so the community knows them as a my dog, and anybody know dogs are my dog, how my dog acts. They will know exactly that is how that person is called. That's how that person is labeled, and that person becomes what they are called with their label. Whatever thing is to you controls your response to it. If something is really important to you, you will empathize and you will have more concern for it. But if it isn't, no, what do you call it? Don't, like how in our vernacular, thing, thing. well, your response to it will be, and if you believe that this pandemic is fake, then your response, you're gonna go to parties, you're gonna go out there without wearing your mask, you're gonna go out there and you're gonna socialize like never before, like, with no care in the world. And as a result, things are gonna happen. So the power of thoughts and words is very important. Remember that controlled perception is not denial of reality, but the control of one's response to reality. So someone say, hey, Troy, how you feeling today? I can be sick or ailing in my body from something, but my response to it, I can say I'm doing well, but that doesn't mean that I am denying, but I'm just speaking into the atmosphere, my response to the reality. Or let's, for example, I just lost my job. The reality of it is I lost my job. How are you doing? Well, you know what? I am so happy now. I'm able to work on some projects I always had to work on for years. I'm not denying the reality that, hey, I might lose some income as a result of losing that job. What is my response to what happened to me? And that is what happens in crisis. Crisis can happen to any and each one and every one of us. It is not the reality of it, that it happened, but it's how we respond to how it happens. On the screen here, you see an eagle. And what I like about this eagle is that, unlike birds, you hear about flocks of birds, but you never hear about flocks of eagles. You have pigeon flies in group, doves flies in groups, but you don't see the eagle flying in groups. What I like about the eagle and why I use this example is that an eagle is a bird that know how to deal with crisis situation. And one characteristic of an eagle can fly at least 3 to 5 miles in the air, and it can zoom in on a rat or a rabbit from that distance, and it can keep its focus locked on, its vision locked on to that rat or rabbit, and it will swoop down with its giant 5 feet span of wings, and it will get that rabbit. Its focus. Also, back in the day when our grandparents and our great-grandparents, they didn't have no radio or the weather station, storm coming. Many of them knew that storm was coming because they noticed that the birds will fly and flock and fly away. Eagle, on the other hand, will actually fly into the storm. And as it flies into the storm, it rises above the storm and it rests its wings in above the storm. It's the only bird that does this. And in a crisis situation, that is what we want to happen for you. Don't run away from the situation, but learn to rise above the storm. Crisis is simply a change in the environment that demands a new unscheduled response. Let me say that again. A crisis is simply a change in the environment that demands a new unscheduled response. So, there's a saying, if you keep on doing the same thing over and repeatedly and expecting a different result, that's a sign of insanity. So with a crisis, you can't do the same thing because it's something new. And the same thing as because we are in this crisis situation now as a country, as a people, and many nations around the world is facing, they are facing this type of crisis, the pandemic, COVID-19. And every day, every week, there is something new that they have to deal with as it relates to this crisis. You must remember that crisis is the source of creativity. Crisis is the source of creativity. Crisis is the source of creativity. Sorry about that. I had to interrupt. Somebody came in late and I had to interrupt that presentation. Let me go from the slide here. Yeah, sorry about that, folks. The power of thoughts and words. Crisis is simply a change of the environment that demands a new and shared response. We already dealt with that. Crisis is a source of creativity. You must remember that your crisis is God's opportunity for God's promotion. And a lot of times people don't realize that they can actually hold on to the situation, or they can let it go, or they can find this as an opportunity to change their lives. In our TRP session, we always like to say, O flag, opportunities for learning and growth. And this is what crisis gives you. It gives you an opportunity for learning and growth. And for those of us who are believers, your crisis is God's opportunity for God's promotion. The power of words. And as we say, what you call a thing, that's how you respond. Or what you believe of a thing, that's how you will respond to that thing. Death and life, or life and death is in the power of the tongue. Those who love it will eat its fruit. And you know, I sent out the other day to my WhatsApp group, and I was saying, you know, we got to speak life to situations. And somebody had a long discourse with me. You know what? You could speak life to all kind of situations what you want to speak, but nothing will never happen. Only God can change. But I think she was misunderstanding the concept, what I was using as speaking. I wasn't talking about the area where we talk about name it and claim it. We're talking about when you find yourself back up against the wall, you pray to God, you rely on faith, but you don't come out of that prayer with faith. You don't come out with faith and not do the work to make things happen. You rely on God, you have faith in God, but you must work, because the Bible talks about faith without works is dead. Or you don't come out of that situation and you say, God, you know, I rested in your hands, and then you come out, oh, I can never get this new job. Oh, things can never get better. Oh, this COVID situation's never gonna change. No. With his mouth, the godless destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge, the righteous escape. Through the blessings of the upright, a city is exalted, but the mouth of the wicked is destroyed. The power, remember I talk about reaction, and I talk about which is negative. In our context, we use reaction as negative, and we use response as positive. And the only way you can respond to something in a positive light, you have to be aware. You have to have the information. And that's why we're giving you the information how to rise above the crisis today. And for those who just join us, we had to take a different route. It's supposed to be a training workshop with individuals separating in breakout groups to deal with certain questions, but the 15 persons who sign up, there are only 3 or 4 who were able to sign in at 5 o'clock. And so I decided just to stream live via YouTube to have the video available. And so we wouldn't have all of those things, like those questions, those breakout groups. We wouldn't have that today, but next week, Sunday, we will cover the same topic and we will dig deeper, because we have actually poll questions that the breakout groups will have the answer. So I hopefully those persons who would have signed up for today, they will log back in next week, Sunday at 5 o'clock, so that we can start at 5 o'clock and be out in time for 2 hours, 7 o'clock for the 7 o'clock news. So getting back to the slide, the power of response, it is not what happened to you that matters. It is what you do about what happens that matters. And what I love about this, I could tell you a story about um, some of you might have known Helen Keller. Helen Keller was blind, she was deaf, and she was dumb. You know, those things happened to her. I can't recall exactly how they happened, if it happened from birth or it happened with an illness at a very young age, but those things happened to her. And if you read the history of Helen Keller, you will discover that she wrote so many books. Helen Keller wrote so many books. There's another gentleman, a Black gentleman or African American gentleman, um, Colin Powell. When he was in West Point military school, he gave a speech, and he was, I think he was a second lieutenant then. And this commanding officer came to him and said, "That was an awesome speech, Lieutenant Powell. You're going to become the best Black officer in the military." Colin said in his mind, "I can become the best Black officer in the military? I'm going to become the best officer in the military." Colin realized at that point that that was a racist remark from his commanding officer, and he was only boxing him into, or put him into Black. He's going to be the best Black officer without equating him to the other officers who might be of the white race. And Colin stated later that, racism is the other guy's problem. It's not his problem. And if you know the history of Colin Powell, he went on to become a general in the U.S. Armed Forces, chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, and served as Secretary of State under George Bush. And he's very, son of an immigrant, by the way, very renowned, successful military guy who a lot of persons have respect for through the United States. So the whole thing is a racist remark. It isn't what happened. If racism happens to you, it isn't what happens to you, but it's what you do about what happens that really matters. So it's a powerful response. He responded in what we call the totally responsible person's way. And then you have to realize, in a crisis situation, doing nothing is not an option. You either speak life, and if you don't even speak, death will happen. So the thing is, you have to take a choice. You have to do something, and that is what it's all about. Things that will destroy us, and taken from Mahatma Ghandi. And these are principles. Politics without principle. And you know exactly what's happening in the US, in their political world, and even locally in our Caribbean countries, or even locally here in the Bahamas. Politics without principles. And I think in Belarus or Belgrade, I'm not sure, the country where the dictator there had a fixed rigged election. And now there's a lot of rioting going on in the streets, and over 1,000 persons were arrested just yesterday because politics without principle. Gandhi said that will destroy us. Pleasure without conscience, people want. So what's happening with COVID-19? Here, even in the Bahamas and throughout the United States, people just want to go into the bars and they want to have parties. They want to pool parties. In California, there was having those parties. And during the crisis situation, the illness spiked. And so that's like pleasure without conscience, because you have no conscience for other persons. You just want to enjoy yourself. Wealth without work. And you know, wealth without work, doing the drug trade. A lot of persons got, they got a lot of ill-gotten gains through the nefarious drug trade. And wealth without work, it will destroy you eventually. If it doesn't destroy you physically, it's going to destroy you, your character, and it's going to destroy your soul. Knowledge without character. And I'm sure you can list a lot of persons out there who are, so smart, but character is, much to desire. Then you have business without morality. In crisis situation, you will find that businesses will gouge their prices up. And so you have business without morality. People just want to, their focus is not really the humanity. Their focus is the dollar. The bottom line is just the profit dollar. And they could care less if the product has quality or the product is doing what it say it will do. They just want the money's in. And so business without morality will destroy us. Science without morality, without humanity. There's a lot of conspiracy theories going on in COVID-19. And so you will have some science going on with you without humanity. And then when we talk about science without humanity, you have some folks, because of their belief system, they don't believe that they should take the fetus of individuals and test them to see how we can make cures and so forth like that. They believe that you should do it on probably animals and stuff like that, but not on humans. So science without humanity can, and usually when you have that is because people would do it because of the dollar. My throat there. Good. So now we talk about the effects of crisis. We talk about results of crisis. We talk about what crisis is. And so the only way you can rise above the crisis, you have to find the future in your work. And going forward, we will share with you the difference between your job and your work. You have to think beyond your job. Remember, a job, and what we used to call job, or what we call job actually in our business setting, is joining beyond bondage, or journey of bondage, we should say, or just over broke. That's a job. We always say that you have to think beyond your job because your job is only going to pay you for what they say the job is worth. The job will never pay you for your value. The job will only pay you for what they say the job is worth. So if you want to be just over broke, or you want to stay on a journey of bondage where you just go to work, come back home, go sleep, get up in the morning, come back home, and the people only paying you enough so you can return back to work the following week or the following Monday. If they pay you on a Friday or they pay you on a Monday, they paying you so you can come back to work again, because time is, you get paid, time is at weekend and happen, or 2, 3, 48 hours. You need to borrow something from Sally, Sue, or Mary. So you have to think beyond your job. You must think beyond your job. There is no future in any job. There is no future in any job. A lot of times people say about jobs, and I say journey of bondage or just over broke. A job is a pyramid. And when we talk about it, a pyramid is like this. There's only one boss to the top. And down to the bottom of the pyramid is the most of the line workers who get less of the money and doing most of the work. They're probably doing 80% of the work and only getting 20% of the lion's share. Whereas 20% of the company or the job getting 80%. So you gotta remember that. That's the pyramid there. The future is in the one who holds the job. Excuse me. The future is in the one who holds the job. And when we say the future is in the one who holds the job, the future is not in the job. It is in you who holds that job. Then you have to create your business in your job. You know, I think, I can't remember it well, in one of my favorite books, one of my favorite books of literature, the Bible, where it states that, you know, you sow your seed several places because you don't know which one will spring up. I go further on to say that you have to create your business in your job, meaning that use your job as a stepping stone, use your job to practice for your business, use your job to practice for your work, get the discipline, get the information so that you can have a successful business. If you cannot be successful in your job, and when I say successful, not necessarily getting all the promotion that you should have gotten, but successful in knowing your job, doing your job more than the bare minimum, and you get your work out on time, and you always get above average ACR, annual confidential reports, and you know that you are doing well on your job. You are learning and you're using your job to learn. And so you turn that in and carry that same discipline, carry that same vigor into your business. Make yourself indispensable by refining your value on the job. You know, ask yourself this question. If something should happen today to you, can that job go on? And many of us would say yes, because we have not made ourselves indispensable by redefining our value and our gift on that job. You know, you're supposed to be so good at what you do on your job. Tell when you take vacation, it's like, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? Mind you, you already train everybody else under you. You know, I'm not hogging up all the information, but because you do it so well, the other persons do it well, but you do it par excellence that they won't call you and you're on vacation or you're taking time off. Job versus work. And remember I told you that your job is Johnny or bondage or just over broke because they pay you enough just to come back. I want you to know that you should never confuse your work with your job, never, because your work and your job, they are totally different. Your job is what you are trained to do. You go to college 4 years, some of us 6 years, some 8 years. Then after that, you go for certification, you go for apprenticeship and all of those kind of things. And you enter the job and you're training for years, 10, 15, 20 years. Your job is what you are trained to do, but your work is what you were born to do. Your work is within you, is trapped within you. And later on, we'll see, and I always like to tell people, your future is not ahead of you. Your future is trapped within you. Your work is what you were born to do. That's the difference between your job and your work. Your job is your career. You know, years ago, before I went off to university, you know, people stay on a job 10, 20, 30, 40 years. When I got into college, they tell us, you know, people in a 20-year span, people would change jobs like 3 to 4 times. Lo and behold, I didn't know that I would have changed from the Defense Force. Actually, I looked back and I saw I was in the hotel as a chef. Then I went on the Defense Force. Then I came back home and I gone into social services, rehab and welfare services. And I did part-time police while after I left government. And I work as an insurance consultant. And so I had many jobs in my career. And for me, I allowed that to prepare me for the work that I'm doing today with the exposure and the experience leading the National Lead Institute, because I bring to bear all of the information I would have learned in all of those different spheres, my journey throughout life. I would have learned and I bring that to bear. Your work is your life assignment. And because of what I learned through all of those years and those different jobs, that helped me with my life assignment. This, what I'm doing here today, is a part of my life's assignment. Training, motivating, teaching is a part of my life assignment. Your job is your skill. So you learn and you perfect the skill on a job so that your work, your gift, you know, the Bible says your gift will make room for you. And, you know, I'm so happy that my gift made room for me. And if those of you heard or who viewed the video biography that I shared before I came in on the presentation, my gift made room for me, and I'm not the smartest or the brightest color in the crayon box, but the gift that I fine tune and keep on fine tuning every week, every month, every day, every year is making room for me, and it's taking me places. You know, you can retire from a job. After 17 years in government, I didn't retire, I transfer because I use the knowledge that I had to put into my work. And so you remember that you can retire from your job, but you can't retire from your work because your work is your life assignment. Jobs prepare you for your work. Remember, job prepare you for your work. You were born to make a difference, not to get a paycheck. So a paycheck is a side benefit. You're not supposed to go, we call it the rat race, where you go to work, you actually get up in the morning, you eat breakfast, you go into the long line of traffic, time to make the donut, go to work, stay there for 9 to 5, working with people who you don't even like anyway, for the most part, in some instances. Then you return home, back into the traffic, back home. They get a paycheck at the end of the week, what they ain't paying you long enough. That's a side benefit. So you should use that as a side benefit where you take some of that, put that aside, invest that to start your life work. Jobs are temporary. Work is permanent. You know, they could fire you from a job, but they cannot fire you from your work. You can retire from your job, but you will never retire from your work. And I'm glad I found my purpose in life because, you know, I will be doing things like this, training groups. You know, the pandemic thought it would stop me. But, you know, you don't even have to pay me. When you find your work, nobody have to pay you to do it. So I design or I develop modules so that I can help train persons with the information that I would have been trained with as an international certified trainer. And I will give the information and knowledge that I have in any subject matter, basically. And I will be doing this until the Lord calls me home. So I have found my life assignment, and I use my job, all those jobs I've been on for the last 17, 20 years before transitioning into my work. Your work protects you from your job. So when we say your work protects you from your job, that means you don't have to go there and look for a job. Mind you, I'm not telling you to stop your job today and get into your work. What you do is you do your work part-time, work your job full-time, but your work protects you because you can be the best that you can be on that job. And even if they fire you from that job, you will transition. I remember when I get let go from this company, I wouldn't call the company's name. They paid me more than they were supposed to pay me. They let me go because they said, you know what, our relationship was strained after being with them 4 years. I was their legal officer at their company. I'll never forget this. And they paid me extra. But mind you, when they say the relationship was strained, I brought in more money for that company during that period, during that year period when I found my work than previously or prior to that. And I always remember, I said, I will never go back to work or on a job for somebody. It has to be contractual, but I'll always be doing my work. And that was 11 going on to 12 years ago when I left the job market. Been doing this ever since. Your work is your seed. And you know what seeds, they have to be buried. So when you bury a seed, that means it's going to be in darkness. It's going to be watered. All kind of stuff going to go on top of it. Even we say cow manure, horse manure, all that stuff, vine that goes on top of it. But if it's a true, authentic seed and it's planted in the right soil, that seed will grow. So remember that your work, and if your work that you're doing is from God, when it's planted, it will grow. You have to be seedful. Being seedful is everyone. Remember, everyone possesses a seed of greatness. Your seed is within you. Your seed isn't out there. And we like to say, in every seed, there is a forest. And in every follower, there is a leader. You possess a seed of greatness. And that seed is trapped within you. And that seed needs to be watered, fertilized, so that it can eventually spring out and grow. Your seed is your purpose and your passion. This is what I love to do. I'm passionate about it because once you find your purpose, you can be passionate about it. Like I said before, nobody have to pay you to do this. Your seed contains your future. Remember, in every seed, there's a forest. In every follower, there's a leader. Your vision determines your destiny. Your seed, in that seed. And when we talk about seed, you look at an apple seed. Sometimes hold a seed in front of you and say, what is it? Some people only see a seed, but trapped inside that seed is many trees, because out of that one seed comes one apple tree, and then comes the fruit that the tree bears, and there'll be fruits without other seeds. And so that's how we get the forest. So in every seed, there's a forest. Your seed is the ideas that won't go away. Let me tell you something. If you're working on somebody's job and you have this idea and keep on nagging you, and you get so frustrated, and then you see a program on TV and you say, you know what, I got to do this. And you go into bed and you're thinking about this. That's a seed. And with seed, you have to nourish it. You have to water it, fertilize it, make sure it's in the right environment. And once that idea grows, becomes full blown. Next week, I'll share the story about how we were able to take the seed, plant the seed, and make it grow. Your seed determines your natural talents. So remember, your seed, you're seedful, your seed is within you, and it determines your natural talent, because in your seed is your natural talent. I know I love to cook. And I'm realizing even during this pandemic, before I even joined the Defense Force, and I used to cook on the Defense Force, and when I used to cook in the hotel, I always remember that I used to say, I want to open up an IHOP. That was my dream. Now, I haven't gone at it like I should, but this pandemic has shown me that, you know what? I trying all kind of different things and stuff like that. Maybe I need to test the waters and see where that goes. Because, you know, before I used to sell lunch one time ago too. That's another story for another time. The world needs your seed. The world needs it. With all going on right now, the world needs your seed. Your seed, your ideas, your business. It might be a hobby for you, but you create a business out of it. You are actually fulfilling some need. And you want to know the connectivity of all of this? This is how you're going to rise above the crisis that you face in your life. It could be the pandemic, it could be the Hurricane Dorian, or whatever crisis that you face in your life today. If you develop your fruit, you don't have to worry about crisis. That's simple. You don't have to worry about crisis if you develop that fruit, because you see what happens during this crisis? The food stores remain open, the pharmacies remain open. People who are gifted in those areas, they're still thriving. They're still thriving. So think about it. Think about it. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, people always need shelter. People always need food, water, safety. So your seed should be around those needs. the inherent seed, that you have. What lies behind us and what lies before us are just tiny matters, tiny, very minuscule matters compared to what lies within us. You have a seed of greatness. And as I wrap up, crisis and creativity. The Asians, when they see crisis, definition, they don't see what we say, oh Lord, what I can do. They see opportunity. When the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the United States and its allies dropped the bomb there to end World War II with the Japanese. That was a crisis situation. But out of that crisis situation, the Japanese over years started to produce vehicles like mad crazy, and they started exporting them to the United States. We even buy a lot of Japanese cars. You see these little smaller cars, but they don't even use here now. And within 20 years, they were the most powerful economy in the world after World War II. United States had to stop them. You know, no, y'all flooding our market, y'all cause our economy to crash. Y'all flooding our market. And because what happened is that they knew, culturally, they knew that crisis is opportunity for them. Crisis is the cradle of creativity. You know, when you're back against the wall, your creative juices start flowing and you can start thinking how you can get out of the situation that you find yourself in. That's what happens in crisis. Crisis and pressure are the incubators of innovation. That's when innovation comes, during crisis and pressure time. Innovation is the capacity to create new approaches and concepts to deal with new challenges. So COVID-19 comes, hey, look here. I asked a question the other day. I said, why can't we go online? Like, you know, when I was living in North Carolina, working out of North Carolina, we had to close down our business out of North Carolina. Why can't we just go online, order our grocery, and go to the store and either pick it up like I used to do in RC when I was in North Carolina, or they deliver it the following day when I shop today, once it's in the 25 miles radius. Why can't we do that? But you know what? We're gonna move to that because where we can't see each other, be up in each other's space, we got a social distance, innovation is gonna come out a lot. A lot of people are doing it right now with curbside delivery as it relates to keeping safe during this pandemic. Innovation is the perceptivity to see possibilities and combination of old and new concepts. So you take in old and you take in new concepts and you're seeing a new blended. So I hear Ministry of Education now talking about, and I think it's the first time in the history, thinking about a hybrid form of learning, partly online and the next part in the classroom. Some of us who have done our postgraduate studies, a lot of us done it online and then we had to go, you know, but now that's going to become a norm in many of our schools throughout the Bahamas, the Caribbean, and the United States. Innovation is the creation, development, and application of untested ways of solving old and new problems. Remember, and I always tell people, you know, I know they talk about this virus, this vaccine that is coming out. But people don't realize that that's what innovation does. Innovation happens as a way of crisis. And so this is the fastest they've ever gone to testing or what we call new vaccines for solving some new problems and challenges that we face with COVID-19 and some old ones. So some medicines are they're even developing tests now, which you can get back in 5 minutes, saliva tests. It's coming out through the FDA. And so they're being creative because they're being pressured because what's happening during the crisis situation. The capacity to think beyond the known, to defy the norm and believe in one's abilities to solve problems. See, that's how you rise above crisis. You have to become innovative, and you have to think beyond what is, oh no, you can't do that. No. For us who are believers, once you have faith and you connect with the Most High, you can defy the norms. You can believe in your ability to solve problems. And that's how you make it, find a problem and solve it. So I will leave these 10 ways to rise, and I wouldn't go into details today, but next week we will discuss this. We will dissect this next week, Sunday. 10 ways to rise above crisis. You have to initiate a solution. Place demands on the potential. Test the creativity of your team. Believe in your ability to solve problems. Look at what you have. We always say, look at what you have. Stop looking at what you don't have. Look at what you have. Study what you have. See potential of your resources. Understand the norm, what is going on. Understand it. That means you have to study it. Understand the true nature of your resources. And then you have to act on faith. Faith has to tie it all together. And that's 10 ways to rise above your crisis. Adversity, which is a part of the crisis situation that we face here, that's going on in this pandemic. Like Shakespeare says, sweet are the uses of adversity. If there is a silver lining to bad times, it is this: when facing severe challenges, your mind is normally at its sharpest. Humans seldom have created anything of lasting value until they go through a crisis. John Huntsman. Remember, there's a saying we always say, behind every dark cloud, there's a silver lining, or there's a pot of gold beyond the rainbow. And after every storm, there comes the sunshine. In all of this, you have to have faith. And I like to put it simple. Faith is that thing that God showed you in the light that you now have to believe in the dark. You have to believe what God told you in the light because you're in the dark, and the dark is the crisis situation. So God promised you something, and you know that he don't fail. It might be delayed, but it's not denied. You have to use faith in this time of adversity. And in closing, there are 2 tragedies of crisis. The 2 are withdrawing generosity. People don't give no more. Working for a nonprofit like I do, our portfolio came from up here to down here. It's like all the donors who gave us throughout the year just stop. So during crisis situation, people stop from being generous. Generosity, don't be that liberal. The compromise of civility, decency, and values. People sell their soul, their soul for a bowl of soup. Gray is no substitute for black and white. So remember to rise above your crisis. You have to find a seed within you, and you have to allow it to germinate, grow, bear fruits. In every seed, there is a forest, and in every follower, there is a leader. Your vision determines your destiny. And these are the nuggets I leave with you today that will help you to rise above the crisis in your life today. So in closing, I want to share one more video. And although there's only 3 of you on today, but I know there are some folks watching live via YouTube. What I would like to do is, there's one more video I'd like to share actually. And what I can do is open up the mics for questions. Right, okay. Let me just open this up. After this, I will leave for question.
For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. Such powerful promises are found throughout the Bible to remind you of your inheritance given by God. They also demonstrate how highly God regards each of you. And if God, who made you, consider you deserving of a rewarding life, you should feel, act, think, and talk that way. Yes, you have all been given a promised land, but the way you see yourself prevents you from occupying that promised land and from entering your palace. The palace I speak of is made up of your goals, your vision, your destiny. You will never reach your palace thinking, talking, and acting like a peasant. With a peasant mentality, you will only dally around the palace walls but never enter it. The palace will always be within your reach, but you will remain outside by feeding your poor me mentality with negative opinions of yourself. This mindset of inferiority is known as the grasshopper complex. The grasshopper complex is based on the fact that a grasshopper is a small insect that struggles to survive in a giant world of insect eaters. Grasshoppers are often trampled on by men and other animals that are huge compared to them. In practice, this complex is a combination of your negative thoughts, words, and resulting actions. In addition to having a low self-esteem, you believe that others think poorly of you. If we go back into history, we would discover this complex existed from biblical days. Prior to entering the land of Canaan, Moses sent out 12 spies to survey the land. 10 came back with a self-destructive assessment. They reported that the people they met on the land were giants in stature, and they, in their own eyes, seemed like grasshoppers, and so the people must have also seen them that way. They saw themselves as lesser than, insignificant, weak, and powerless. Although God had promised them the land, these men gave into fear and negative thoughts. In their minds, they had already lost the battle. They contaminated the whole community with this discouraging report. And when the votes were counted, only 2 were ready for war. These 2 young men, Joshua and Caleb, had a different outlook. They believed that even if there were giants, they were able to defeat them. In their minds, they were stronger than the giants. The differences in attitudes were as a direct result of differences in the way they saw themselves. Today, many signs and symptoms of the grasshopper complex are visible among us. Maybe you or the person next to you suffer from this deadly virus. There will always be giants standing in the way of your destiny. They come in many different forms. Your giant might be a bad choice, mistakes, an unpleasant past, or some personal challenge you consider too big to handle. In life, there are situations which cause us to have a lame position in our thoughts. As a result, we be discouraged and low in self-value. We feel demeaned and diminished. When this happens, it spills over in other areas of our lives. Virtually many persons are in that position today. If you are facing such giants, these giants can all be conquered by the way you see yourself. It is important that you do not consider yourself as a grasshopper in comparison. As long as you see yourself as a grasshopper, you will believe that you are insignificant and too weak to survive. You will become paralyzed by the fear of failure, that your greatest defense is to say, I can't. Remember, your palace is always within your reach, but you will never enter your palace as a peasant. The only way to enter it is as a king. Do not let the grasshopper complex keeps you from living your potential. If you realize you are a victim of this crippling complex, you can overcome it. During a phase of my life, I suffered from this complex. A speech impediment prevented me from speaking fluently. Whenever I attempted to speak, I stuttered and became tongue-tied. Eventually, I convinced myself that I could never speak in public or even read before an audience. I told myself that public speaking was meant for persons more fluent than I was. However, with the encouragement from my mother and years attending speech therapy, I gained the belief that I can speak anywhere and read before any audience. Yes, I got rid of the grasshopper complex. So today, my friend, I am telling you, you will never reach your palace thinking, speaking, and acting like a peasant. The only way to reach your palace is to think like a king. And to think like a king, your thoughts, your actions, and your words must align as one. And I leave this with you, that your vision will determine your destiny. Get rid of the grasshopper complex.
Yes, thank you. And that ends my presentation for the day. I know somebody else had to leave. There are only a few of you left. Are there any questions for me to respond to? Okay, I would read a comment. Okay, good, awesome. Awesome, okay. Thank you guys. And I look forward to seeing the rest of the persons who should have been here, who signed up. I mean, I had 14 persons that I approved. I don't know if it was any difficulty for them signing in or getting in this afternoon, but we will sign back on next week, Sunday at 5 p.m.
Great session. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Patrice. Yes, how do you pronounce your name? Kathy, I can't pronounce, I don't want to mess up that name. How do you pronounce that name?
No problem, Katia.
Katia, okay. Yes, it wouldn't be the same link. What I will do is I have your email and I will send the link out to you for you to register for next week. Okay,
great,
but it'll be
thank
the same, it'll be the same information, but we will be discussing the information. Hopefully we have 4 or more so that we can actually dissect and do the poll question as well for next week.
Maybe a reminder for next,
Thank you.
maybe a reminder would help.
Yeah, you weren't on your phone today. I sent a reminder actually before I
Yeah.
came on. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll do that again. I'll make
Yes.
sure I do that, okay?
All right, thank you.
So thank you guys, and looking forward to seeing you next week.
Likewise,
Good
enjoy your
evening.
evening.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Evening.